Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's TheSketchMonkey here with the 2023 Chevy Colorado Trail Boss. And as you can see, we've had some snow here in Colorado. And remember when I said a couple of weeks ago, when I said in November it's gonna go, and that back then we had like 80 degrees, and I said in November we're definitely gonna have negative degrees and snowfall, and that's exactly what happens. It goes like that, from warmth to winter here in Colorado. 2 days ago we had 80 degrees and today we have 28. So what we're gonna do in this video is of course have a look at this beautiful Trail Boss design. What I like about this truck overall is that if you want an off-road capable truck, but you don't want to spend 60, 70 grand on it, this is a really good option because you don't have all the luxuries that you have in those very expensive trucks, the Canyon AT4X and those type of trucks. Instead, they removed some of the luxuries and focused on what matters, and that is the off-road capabilities in this truck. So it sits 2 inches higher than a standard Colorado, and you also have 9.6 inches of ground clearance. So what we're gonna do in this video is have a look at this design, talk about a couple of changes that I wanna see in the front end. I'm not sure if that's an option, but maybe it is. Talk about the front end design, the side, the rear end, the interior, and then we're gonna take this for a drive. But before we do that, let's pop the hood and let's see what's hiding under there. Under the hood right here, we have the same 4-cylinder. It's a 2.7 liter turbo 4-cylinder that we have in the Canyon, putting out 310 horsepower, connected to an 8-speed automatic, and of course you do have 4-wheel drive in this one. And 0 to 60 is not the fastest truck. This does 0 to 60 in about 7 seconds. And the base and the price for this Colorado, the Trail Boss, is about $40,000 as we talked about. And I think that's such a good deal for what you get. As I said, if you want an off-road capable brand new truck, I think this is just a fantastic option. I think it looks great as well. So let's close the hood and let's talk about this design. Looking at the front end design, you can see where Chevy saved some money here, and I think that is totally fine. However, there are a couple of things here in the front. Let's start up top. That I want to change. But let's start up top with this hood design. Have a look at the zigzag shape going on right here. So we have this chamfer going in here, coming back, going back around, and then coming back in the side, going up to the A-pillar. Very chiseled and cool looking design for the hood. It feels like the designers had a lot of fun sculpting this design itself up top. Moving further down, we do have the brand new face, as you can see, for 2023. However, look at the overall styling of this truck. It looks very modern to me. It looks super crisp and chiseled and nice. However, what makes it feel dated is, of course, the light bulb headlights that we have right here. Even though we do have a cool Chevy logo in there on this little piece, which looks pretty cool, but if there is an option for it, I would love to have the Trail Boss, this one, and add maybe $1,500 and add the LED headlights onto this specific package, because in the LED headlights you do have a nice daytime run light LED going right here on the brand new Colorado, and I think that I think this design just deserves to have LED headlights in the front end. But other than that, we do have the indicators right here, and we have a lot of styling going on in the overall grille, as you can see, with all these edges and corners and chamfers. However, looking at the corners here, I think they could have done something different with this section. I want to have maybe just an opening here, or maybe put in this area at the lower section, make this a fog light or something. So this is not just a plastic piece that sits in the corner of the front end. But we do have some painted piece down here at the bottom, and this is of course the bumper. This is what's going to hit any obstacles first. It's going to be this piece. It's pretty interesting that they made this piece painted, but the rest is unpainted, since this is going to be the first thing that hits any sort of obstacle in front of you. As I said, 9.6 inches of ground clearance is not bad at all. Overall, the front end looks really cool. We do have the Trail Boss logo right here, the blacked out bow tie in the middle, and we have some interesting designs for these vents here on the side of the grille. So moving on to the side view, and this is where I think Chevy, both Chevy and GMC, did a fantastic job with the design by chiseling everything up and making it feel really, really modern. Because look at the rear fender, for example, and compare it to the front end. We do have a connection between the two when it comes to the chiseledness and the line flow, because we have this line cutting in from the, not really the corner of the headlight, but down here, cutting in here and then splitting into two different areas here, coming back in the lower section, going all the way across and into the rear end, as you can see. And we have the same type of styling for this area back here. We have this now coming from this area and splitting right here, going down and up, continuing across over the rear axle and then going into the shoulder line. Looking fantastic. I think it's a really cool looking design. It gets a little complex at the very end in this area with the surfacing. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but I want to show you what this looks like in profile and the ground clearance. It definitely looks like it's capable of taking on some trails. But we don't have any rock sliders back down here. That's probably something I would like to add as well to kind of protect the frame. And I think it also would add a nice base overall for the design. We do have these blacked out fenders sticking out. This is as wide as the ZR2 Colorado with these fenders. We have the 18-inch gloss wheels, which I actually think looks pretty cool. Since we have an off-road truck like this, black wheels kind of suits this overall design in my opinion, and I'm not sure if I would switch those out. I actually think they look pretty good on this design. And I also like this line that we have right here in the greenhouse, how it just goes up right here a little bit, creating almost a sportier look than the Silverado, for example, to have more of an angle there than we have in the bigger trucks. You also have a nice little chamfer right here. Small details like this. It's just a small little chamfer here to add some interesting surfacing in this area instead of just having it be round and flat. Now, looking at this section right here, look at the integration of the taillight. It has already a very complex design, and this creates some complexities in this area because we have a lot of lines cutting from the very corners of the taillights here and then fading into this big surface area. So it looks very interesting when you look at it and the reflections of that specific surface of the rear end. However, I do love that they have the Trail Boss sticker on here. It looks pretty cool, and it kind of adds something to this otherwise very blue surface that we have going on in the side view. Coming around to the rear end, and again, I think this design overall is just a beautiful looking car, but what lets it down when it comes to modernized feel are the taillights, just as we have in the headlights with these light bulb taillights. I would much rather have a full LED taillight and headlight to kind of bring this design up to current, current designs when it comes to 2023. And also because I think this deserves it. But we do have a rear mounted camera right here, and you can equip this with a 360 view if you want to. We also have some chiselness going on in the tailgate itself with this section right here. And if you fold this down, we have this new storage compartment that we have in the GMCs as well. So if you open these up, let's see if they're not frozen though. They're very cold out today, and it was freezing all night. So you have some storage underneath here. Pretty cool integration, and that is why you can see that the tailgate itself is kind of bulging out. If we close this, we have this bulge right here, and that is of course to house this compartment, or down here actually, for the storage of it. And then you have the Chevy logo or letters stamped into the tailgate itself, adding some more details into the rear end. You also have the side steps or the bumper steps right here for easy access up to the bed. The bed is actually nothing special. You do have the Chevy logo up there, and it is a spray-in bed liner, as you can see, but there's no connectivity and no lighting back here, which again I feel is totally fine because it brings down the cost, and not everybody needs connection back there or needs any sort of lighting. They just want a truck that they can take off-road for a decent price. So with that said, we've talked about the exterior design. Let's jump in now and have a look at this interior and what you get for $40,000 in the brand new Colorado. Let me first of all give you an overview of this interior, and as you can see, it's pretty black and dark in here. A lot of hard plastic. Talk more about that in a minute, but overall I think the layouts and the housing, look at that, housing for the gauge cluster, the screen integration, I think it's overall a relatively cool design from Chevy with this interior. You have the power adjustable seats, which is standard. You have the cloth seats in this case on the Trail Boss, which I think is totally fine and nothing that I complain about at all, because again, it brings down the cost. So let's jump in here. Let me show you the details that we have going on in the interior of the 2023 Colorado. So the overview looks fine and the driving position is great as well. As you can see, we do have a lot of hard plastic. So this entire surface up here is all hard plastic. This is also hard plastic down here as well, and on the doors. So we do even have hard plastic on the area where you're gonna have your arm when you're chilling out and driving. But we do have some camo situation going on here and down here as well. So the thing about this, again, like we have in the exterior design, is you do have a lot of cheap materials everywhere. But if you want to have a truck for $40,000 that you can take off-road, again, it comes back to the pricing and what people want. I think there are a lot of people who don't necessarily care about all the luxuries in a truck like this and just want to have a decent new truck to take off-road. The overall design in here with the gauge cluster, we do have a dual housing for it. You have this piece up here, then you have this nice framing for this fully digital gauge cluster, which another thing that I would like to change here is to just have this gauge cluster fill out the corners and the edges here. Now it's just a square in a framing that doesn't suit the square. However, you still have some cool customizations going on here in the interior. And I specifically like this view here for the off-road purpose, where you have the steering angle, you have what gear you're in, what the transfer case, and you also have the pitch and roll situation right there. I think it looks really cool, but I would rather just have it be in this display when I'm driving. So you have the tachometer going around, the speedometer, and the normal gauges on the side. Pretty basic styling, and if we rev it a little bit, it sounds decent. This 4-cylinder doesn't sound bad at all. I do like that you can hear the turbo at sometimes. You also have this 11.3, I believe this infotainment screen is the size of it, which is great. Again, in this price range, you have a lot of different settings here for the car itself. You have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. One detail that I'm not a huge fan of in this specific infotainment system, if you look here, there's nowhere you can change the light settings for the exterior lighting. You have to go in to the software and do that. So here we click auto, now we have the lights on and so on. So I would much rather have just a normal dial down here, or a little stock on the side of the steering wheel, instead of having to go into the settings software itself to just change the lighting. Moving further down, we do have the Google Maps here as well, which looks fantastic. Very, very easy to use and super responsive. And going into the home screen, we have all these settings. You have the air down mode. You can air down the tires if you want to do that from the inside. However, you do have to inflate them yourself, which is, I guess, totally fine. Let's go into the cameras. This is, in this specific Trail Boss, you only have the reverse camera in here. But as I said, you can equip this with the 360 camera if you want to. Further down, we do have a nice dial here for the fan speed, looking pretty cool, and at least they did add some different texture than this hard plastic that we have here. They added a little bit of different rubber. This is actually rubberized, which is great. You also have this chrome circle around it. You have the start-stop button right here, and you have the temp control. So you don't have dual climate control settings in this one, but again, it comes down to pricing. Not everybody wants that. Then you have this buttons right here, of course, for the climate control settings as well. I'm glad that they kept these two physical, of course, because these are the two main climate control settings that you want to adjust quickly, is the fan speed and the temperature, and you get both of those, as you can see, physical right here. Then you have the vents down here, all in hard plastic black. You have the automatic shut-off for the engine, which I always turn off. You have the hazards, lane keep assist. You have two USB here, USB normal, USB-C. You don't even get a wireless charger in here. That would be something that I would probably option for in my Trail Boss. I would want to have the LEDs up front and in the rear for the lighting to make the modern look complete on the exterior. and I want to have a wireless charging pad right here. Those would be my only options. I don't care about the hard plastic or the cloth seats. I think that's fantastic that they offer that in this price range. And you also have this rotary dial right here for the, as you can see, the drive modes: tow haul, terrain. You have normal, off-road, and that's about it. You don't have a sport setting in this truck. Again, I think that's something that so many cars these days that are not supposed to have a sport button still added into the cars, and I never really understood that. So not having a sport button, totally fine for me, because this is not a sports car. So what's the point of having a sport button? Then you have the parking brake here, electric, of course. You have the gear shifters here. If you want to shift manually, you can do that here. This is actually a little softer material on this section of the gear selector, which is great. You have the little Chevy logo down there. 2 cup holders. Moving further back, you do have an armrest here. You have this little tray which you can take out, and it is pretty deep. It looks like you do have a connection right here as well, and that is a cigarette 12-volt outlet. No USBs in there, which is also something that I would like to see. Closing this down, and this is pretty much the only surface in the interior that is has a little sponginess to it, as you can see, and actually feels like it is leather wrapped. 2 more cup holders back here, and we talked about the seats already. They look pretty basic, but they are very, very comfortable. Sometimes going back to the basics is actually a good idea, because why try to fix something that's been working really well for so long? And I think that's what happened here with these seats. Up top, no sunroof, which is great in my opinion. I don't want sunroofs, and it also, again, saves a lot of money. I do like the design of these vents that we have on the side here, looking completely different from the vents that we have in the middle section. And last but not least, do we have a glove box? Of course, this being a truck, we do have a pretty small glove box, I would say, for this type of vehicle. So with that said, I think we talked about everything in the front end here. So let's jump back. I'm 6'1", and I want to see how good or how bad I fit behind my own driving position. So jumping into the back seat, this is what it looks like. Pretty standard stuff. As you can see, we don't even get pockets for the back sides of the seats here, which is pretty interesting. You have zero connectivity here as well. It's very, very basic, this truck, and I think that's going to be a winning formula for the Trail Boss, because I think just having basic stuff like this, just sticking to it and not just slowly adding in, for example, these pockets here or maybe USBs down here, those small changes are going to build up and then bring the cost up. They just wanted to keep the cost down. You don't even get a folding center armrest or cup holders in the center. However, I do believe you do have sort of a cup holder right here that looks pretty interesting in its shape, but I'm sure you can fit a bottle in there. So we talked about the exterior design of the new 2023 Trail Boss. We talked about the interior, but now it's time to take this for a drive. And I do believe that this is going to drive fantastically, because I did a review of the GMC Canyon 84X, and I thought that was a very nice riding truck, since this has the same powertrain, also has the beefed up suspension. Let's go and see what this feels like out on the road. Okay guys, setting off in the 2023 Chevy Colorado Trail Box. Here's the reverse camera, by the way. You have the trajectory lines looking great. Very high resolution, actually. It's a decent camera, this thing. So let's set off and let's see what these 310 horsepower, 390 pound-feet of torque feels like. Stepping on it, it does feel pretty lively. I mean, 0 to 60, who cares really about 0 to 60 in a truck like this? But it's around 7 seconds or just under 7 seconds, which is totally fine. I think this powertrain is great. There's no more V6 though. Some people might prefer the V6, but when it comes to fuel economy and so on, this turbo 2.7 liter 4-cylinder is definitely a little bit more fuel efficient, and it sounds good too. So let's slow it down here to 0. There's nobody behind me, no one in front of me. Down to 0, and let's go. and we're up to 60. So it does feel, you know, like it had just enough, just the right amount of power for this type of vehicle, in my opinion. And the ride is also very comfortable. Right now I'm in two-wheel drive, normal setting. We can switch it to off-road if you want to go on trails and so on. Super smooth. The suspension is not a lot of body roll either in the corners. And going uphill, shift down. You don't have any pedals or anything like that for this vehicle, but the 8-speed automatic feels decent. It's not the quickest shifting transmission, but it does the job. The thing about this Trail Boss, I think this is probably the Colorado trim level that I would go for, as long, I'm pretty sure you can get the LED headlights and taillights for this type of package. As long as I can get those, I don't necessarily need the wireless charger. I can just plug it in right there with the USB. It's not a big deal at all. Saves me some money, but I would spend the money on the LED headlights and taillights, because as I said, I think this is such a cool design, but it's being let down by the old style lighting settings that we have in the front and the rear. So that's the only change that I would do. When it comes to the design of this, comparing this to the GMC Canyon, for example, I think both of them looks really good, but I think I prefer this. I think I said that in the Canyon review as well, that I think I prefer the front end of this design, simply because we have straight, just horizontal daytime run lights for the LED lights on this, while in the GMC you do have this C-shaped light that is typical of GMC, which of course is good for brand identity. But when it comes to pure looks, I just think this looks just a little bit better than the GMC Canyon, specifically in the ZR2 trim. I do think companies should make more trucks just like this one, where you have, they're good at one thing. This is great at going off-road. That is all this truck cares about. You don't even have heated seats or heated steering wheel in this. You have single zone climate settings. And honestly, I am totally fine with that, specifically for $40K, which again is not cheap, but that's on the cheaper end when it comes to new trucks today. And if you want to have, you know, a truck that you can take off-road without having to worry about anything, specifically with the 9.6-inch ground clearance that we have here, and all these drive modes, the 4-wheel low, 4-wheel high, the off-road settings, you can tow up to 3,500 pounds for $40,000. You're gonna have to sacrifice a few things. I think there is a huge market for these type of trucks that are specifically good at one, or great at one thing, even though they lack in things that are not necessarily needed. Coming in and again driving through the very, very small town of Morrison before we jump on to the highway for a short highway run and just see how this feels like in 70 miles per hour, if it's still as comfortable and quiet in here at those speeds. Looking at this steering wheel, this does not feel like leather. It feels like soft, it has a little sponginess to it, this steering wheel design, but still very basic. I do like that we have the blacked out logo in the middle. You have the controls right here to customize the screen in the middle, as you can see. We have the off-road settings right there. I like to have it in this setting. It's the cleanest one, gives me just the basic information. And on the left side, you do have the cruise control settings. So at least you get cruise control in the Trail Boss. Become a standardized features in pretty much every single car. So let's floor it here. Let's get up to 65, 70. There we go. Honestly, after driving both the Canyon and now this Colorado, I have a Ram Rebel. I'm thinking that I might actually prefer this size, the mid-size trucks, over the big size, the full-size trucks, which is the Ram Rebel, the F-150s, and the Silverados, and so on, because these just feel a lot more nimble. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but I do like how these drives. They feel more like a sort of a regular car than a truck, but I do still love my Ram. But next time, if I'm ever in the market for another truck, I think it's going to be a mid-sized truck like this. The wind noise in here at 75 is really good, and the overall, comfort, it feels great. I think it has a lot to do with the off-road suspension that we have on the Trail Boss, but it feels very smooth. And there's really not a lot of tire noise either, even when we have these off-road tires on this Trail Boss. Quality feels nice as well, even though we do have these these hard touch plastic pretty much everywhere. But overall, how everything is put together feels great. And I also like, as I said, the layout that we have in here with the digital gauge cluster, even though I wish it took up the full screen, and how this then extends from the gauge cluster, this infotainment screen, into the infotainment system. So how do we sum up the 2023 Chevy Trail Boss? As I said, I think it's a segment which a lot of people are interested in, which is that you have a relatively cheap truck that is good at one thing and lacks in some luxuries. Overall, I'm a huge fan of this design and this package, the Trail Boss itself. There are a couple of changes that I would add to my Trail Boss, but this is definitely a truck. I think the Trail Boss is the one that I would pick in the Colorado lineup right now. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.